Good evening, YouTube people. It's me once again with another complaint about the famous company, Apple. The company that brags that they make the finest products in the world. The company that charges more than anybody else in the world. Who makes more profit than anybody else in the world. Well, if that's the case, they should be held at a higher standard than anybody. Their customer service, which used to be gold star, used to be the best, is atrocious. My latest bad experience with this so-called greatest company in the world was my wife's iPhone 8 Plus, which is still under a month of warranty left on it. The battery, when the phone sits not used for a few days, will drain down to 60+%. I know better than that, and that didn't start happening till I had to use this phone because they refused to do anything about my iPhone 10. So I had to use my wife's phone. After I got through using it and reset it with iOS 12.1, after that, I noticed that if it sat for a few days, it would eat battery up. No apps running in the background, nothing. The phone off, sitting in her purse or the drawer, it would just, 60-70% of battery life gone. An Apple tech said that the phone had a battery leakage. Not literally leaking, but it was losing a charge while the phone was inactive. And he said that's way too much. So I sent it off to Apple. They get it at 5:03 p.m. 7:03, they're requesting a return label. Send me a letter the next day, an email stating that they were not able to replace the phone, and the letter would explain why. The letter explained nothing. It didn't explain shit. It was basically the same thing the email said. And that if I wanted further assistance to go to an Apple store. So I was pissed off. Called customer relations. Customer relations read over the file where it said that the depot was supposed to replace the battery because it was a hardware problem. They chose not to. So I spoke to another girl named Tanika who called the Altamont Springs store, set it up with a girl named Megan. They held a battery for me until the 29th. I had to get there before the 29th of November and they would replace it. So here I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go up there and get the battery done. And also, if you see my other video, you know I have problems with this POS. That is actually 31 days old. About, of course, 3 or 4 days after the return policy, I couldn't take it back. So now I have to deal with the brain surgeons of Apple, who've made me run test after test after test. And in fact, here's the funny thing is, while they were screen sharing, the phone facial recognition did not work 4 times on 2 phone calls. And they said nothing was wrong. So, after I go up to the Apple store in Altamont Springs, and if anybody is familiar with Ocala to Altamont Springs, it's about an hour and 30 or 40 minute drive to get there. So I go in there, they run a test, they said nothing's wrong with the battery. I explained to them. I said, listen, I did my own little test. Charge my iPhone 10 Max and charge my iPhone 8 Plus. Both at 100%. The iPhone Max was left on because it was where it would not unlock with my facial recognition. And I figured if I had to go up to the store, they could actually see what was going on with it. So I made sure I kept the battery charged. So I charged them both at 100%. 3 days later, I checked it. My wife's phone turned off in the drawer use more battery life than the phone that had been on for, at that time, 4 days. But they both had been charged right at a little over 3 days. My phone used 28%. My wife's phone used 35%. So explain to me how in the world a phone that is off uses more than a phone that's on. And please don't try and say, well, lithium batteries, they can do that. I can charge my lithium battery flashlight up and not use it for over a month, and it still works, and it'll work for 30 or 40 minutes. So please don't hand me that garbage about, well, if you don't use it, it'll tend to run the battery down. That's the crap I'm getting from them. See, the problem is they want stupid sheep who don't use common sense so they can run this BS across them, and the people will agree with them or just throw their hands up in the air and say, well, I give up. Well, sorry, Apple, I'm not like that. I don't give up. So I was going to have him look at my iPhone 10. So he goes back there, he gets his supervisor, whatever this guy was, comes out and says, we can't replace your battery. And if you want any further diagnostics. Now get this. My chin almost hit the floor when he said this. He says, if you want any more diagnostics, it'll cost you $100. I said, $100 on a phone that still has warranty on it? You're going to charge me all you're going to do is plug it in there and take a test that takes about 5 minutes and tell you if the battery's good or not. But like the tech guy said on the phone, he said, those are generic tests. They don't mean anything. That doesn't mean that the battery isn't bad. So then they play their old, well, I'm sorry, I know how you feel. If I hear that one more time from any company, I'm going to scream until I can't utter a word anymore. I plainly told this clown, you do not know how I feel unless you're standing in my shoes and you get treated the way I've been treated by your company. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. And I just grabbed both phones and walked out. Because there was no sense in them looking at the iPhone 10 because they weren't going to do anything. I found out that I'm a red flag customer. And let me tell you what a red flag customer is, boys and girls. If you call Apple and you speak to more than one senior advisor about your case, and the reason that happens is because the senior advisors or the customer relations people do not return your phone calls or emails. So after 4 or 5 days, you talk to another senior advisor. Every time you do that, it starts a new case. Even though it's the same case number, it starts a new case. So in other words, if you call 10 times about one product, it's 10 new cases. So the lady says, I called after I left there because I was pissed off. And this rude senior advisor said, well, you've got over 100 cases. I said, how can that be? I haven't owned 100 Apple products. She goes, because you've called so many times, and every time you call and speak to somebody different, it starts a new case over. And you're demanding to speak to higher people up in our organization. Well, that's my right. If your phone isn't working right, then I have the right to do that. Here's another thing. How about having your senior advisors or your customer relations people return phone calls or emails and I wouldn't call you? Here's another thing. Make a better product. You haven't made a good phone since the iPhone 6. Is it my fault when I got an Apple Watch, the Apple Watch 3, that didn't work out of the box? AT&T and Apple worked 3 days diligently trying to get this thing to connect to Wi-Fi and sell, and it wouldn't. So I guess that's my fault, because you make a product that doesn't work. You people are insane. You're crazy. It's just a way for you to get out of taking care of somebody. So I said, if you expect me to apologize for calling when your people don't call back, or you expect me to apologize for writing a letter to Tim Cook, that's not going to happen. And she was basically calling me a con guy. I said, let me ask you something. I said, what would I get out of getting a new phone for a phone that's less than a month old? I said, you're not getting anything. I said, and second of all, I said, in your notes, does it say anywhere that when the phones came back that they were tampered with, damaged, anything like that? No. No, they weren't. I said, did they misdiagnose it? Like, maybe they should have checked more and seen if it was a software problem and not a hardware problem? No, that's not in there. I said, so, let me get this straight. Your engineers are the ones who say, give the last say-so on replacing a phone or an iPad or anything else. If they deemed that the product was defective and tell me to go get one, tell me to go to a store and get one, then whose fault is that? I'm just doing what your company told me to do. They figured that the phone was defective. So, if you take more than 3 items back, then you make multiple phone calls and speak to multiple senior advisors or customer relations, then they consider you a red flag customer. Oh, we have to protect ourselves against fraud, that you're not trying to commit fraud. And they've also will do this, they did this to me twice, wanted me to send proof of ownership. I'm making payments at AT&T on the device. Who the hell do you think owns it? So, Apple, I don't know what's happened. Steve Jobs has got to be rolling over in his grave. But they've changed customer service completely. It used to be a senior advisor would force or replace an item. In 2 or 3 days, you'd have a new item. That doesn't work like that anymore. So, the people at Apple told me that to take my phone to the Orlando Mall, the Florida Mall of Orlando. That's the furthest mall away from me. That's 90 miles. They want me to drive 180 miles. Why am I going to drive 180 miles when I already know what the outcome's going to be? They already told me if the product doesn't do it 4 or 5 times in front of them, this is an intermittent problem. You may go 1 or 2 days and it works fine, and then you may go 2 days where it doesn't. So what am I supposed to do? Pitch a tent and camp out there until it doesn't work? You know, if I was 10 minutes away from your store, I could take it to you every time it does that. It's not economically smart to drive 200 miles in a round trip to go up there and take your phone, and if it doesn't do it, they send you on your way and say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Because that's really what they want to do. They act like they're going to go bankrupt if they give you a product. They write it off on their taxes. How stupid do you think I am? See, like I said, you want to deal with people who don't use common sense and are dumb. You don't like when people call you out on your BS. That's what your whole problem is. So, he said, well, I'm going to have to kick this up to executive relations. I said, no, you're not. I said, I'm not dealing with it executive relations. I said, I've already told you. They had a case of mine with an iPhone 10 for 3 months and did nothing. AT&T's corporate office was the one who had to do something. But it cost me. The $340 I had already made payments on. I lost my buy one, get one free. The 14 payments that were remaining on it, I have to make those payments. So I lost $860 plus the fuel and tolls running up there. You know, tempered glass screen protectors. I probably lost $1,000. And you want me to drive up there again? Listen, I was born at night, but not last night. And I'm not hitting a crack pipe. I'm not stupid. You want to screw with me. That's what you want to do. Well, that's all right. I filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau, Consumer Affairs, Federal Trade Commission, both attorney generals in Florida and California, and ripoff.com. And I've already went and got the paperwork from the courthouse to file a case against you in small claims court. If you think I'm going away, wrong. That's not going to happen. Like I said, if you're going to brag that you make the best products in the world, and you're going to charge more than anybody, then they should at least last till the warranty is over with. My first iPhone 3 lasted 4.5 years until the battery finally quit. And then it wasn't worth fixing. These phones of yours and these products of yours don't even make it past 2 months, and they start having problems. So you think everybody's just supposed to just say, oh well, you know. So, this phone right here, this is how I have to get into it now. See the old passcode? Just like, kind of reminds me of having an iPhone 3. I disabled the facial recognition because it doesn't work. So, I'm not going to call with them. And here's the funny thing is, they've already told me that being a red flag customer means that I am not eligible for any replacements, just basic to minimal technical support on the phone. So that's kind of like buying a car and paying $50,000 and not getting a warranty if the car breaks down. If they had told me that from the beginning, which they knew months ago, I would have never bought another Apple phone. And if I did, I would have bought a used one from a third-party company that I didn't have to deal with them. They lied. They want to call people liars and, you know, I wasn't being honest with them. I'm a con guy and all this. Well, you lied to me because the person who told me this was a tier 1. The lowest rung of the ladder knew this. So you're telling me the people in executive relations, the highest department of Apple, doesn't know this? Of course they knew this. They were jerking my chain for 3 months just to waste my time. 3 months of my life that I'll never get back. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'll never buy another new product. There's 5 people on our phone bill that all have Apple products. And me and my wife will never buy an Apple product. And if my 2 kids and my son-in-law want it, you go get your own phone bill, your own account with whatever company you want, and when your product goes bad, you call Apple, because I'm not calling them for nobody else. And the funny thing about it is, they're telling me they're not going to do anything for me. You know how many times they've called me this week? 5 times. If you don't want to do anything, why do you keep calling me? I already told you just to drop it. I'll live with them the way they are. I can't sell them to somebody. I can't sell this phone to somebody because that would be dishonest. I'd be selling somebody a phone that doesn't work, and when they were calling me up and saying, hey, why does the facial recognition not work? What am I going to do? Make up a lie? I'll just have to eat this phone and keep it until it doesn't work anymore. So, you people I know probably look at me and say, this is a guy just complaining to complain. No. These aren't $100 Walmart flip phones. That phone costs almost $1,200. I could have bought a damn computer for that. So, I expect, if you're going to charge more than anybody else, I expect your product to work better than anybody else's. So, Apple, if you think I'm just going to throw my hands up and say the hell with it, and I'm not going to do anything about it, wrong. I'm going to keep writing you and keep, sticking it to you every chance I get until you write a cease and desist letter. You know what? Then I know I've got your attention then. I probably won't win nothing out of this or get anything, but you know what? I'm going to be a thorn in your side because you deserve it. And anybody out there who has an Apple product, you better not call them too many times, and you better not trade in too many devices that are bad, or you'll be put in a corner like me with a dunce cap on and be called a red flag customer. I don't understand why more people like me don't get on here and bitch and complain about them. They are not the same company that Steve Jobs ran. They're not even close to it. They worried about one thing, money. And when they get the money, customer service goes out the window. Because now, and then those idiots tried to get me to send them $1,180 on a credit card, and then once I got my phone and they got my old phone back, they would give it back to you. How much you want to make a bet? They would come back and say, oh, you tampered with this phone, or something's wrong with it, or you broke or damaged the phone, so we can't give you your money back. You think I'm dumb enough to let you hold $1,180? You're out of your mind. You're crazy. So, anybody out there that has an Apple product and is getting the same crappy treatment that I am, you should go and get online, get on any form of social media, write anybody and complain. In fact, people should start a class action lawsuit against them. That seems to get their attention a lot. So, you know what? I'm done with them. Period. Today was the last day. I told them, don't call me anymore. Don't bother me. I'll use the phones the way they are. I'll go and buy a battery from an authorized dealer and pay for it myself for my wife's phone. My phone, I'll just use a passcode to get in it. Kind of makes me feel like I'm back, 10 years ago. So, hey, it's nostalgic. I could just look at it that way. So, people, don't let companies rip you off. Go after them. That's the problem with people. They let companies get away with shit. They let companies run over them and walk over top of them. Go after them. You have resources. Trust me. Ask Pioneer. They thought they were going to do that to me with a $5,000 TV. Well, after looking, I found a law that anything over $3,000 or more, you have 5 years to take them to court. When I pasted and copied that, those rude people at Pioneer, suddenly sugar couldn't melt in their mouth, and they were asking me, sir, where do you want us to deliver your TV at? I said, well, I thought you weren't going to deliver one. Well, we changed our mind. No, you changed your mind because the law was on my side. And I also complained to the Better Business Bureau and Consumer Affairs and Federal Trade and everybody else against them too, because the displays went bad on them. The displays cost more to have shipped and installed than the television was worth. And they stopped making them. They had a whole warehouse full of ones for warranty, and they were fighting me over this. But that's alright. I got them. And I got Sony too. When they had a television that almost caught on fire if I wasn't home that day to unplug it. Like the one guy said from Best Buy that came over and looked at it, he said, you're lucky you're not sleeping at the Holiday Inn. And those bastards fought me for 3 months on that. A whole clump of wires burnt in the back of it. And the guy, the old man they sent over, I don't see anything wrong. I said, you don't see that bunch of wires there melted? Oh, yeah, I'm going to have to take this. I said, you're not taking it nowhere. I said, I'm going to have somebody else look at it. Guy from Best Buy looked at it, said, dude, you're lucky your whole house ain't burned down and you're sleeping at the Holiday Inn. He says, I know somebody at Sony, I'll get this taken care of. And he did. But it took 3 months. These companies don't care. Go after them. I am done with my rant. You have a good evening.